Hello, loyal listeners. Thanks for tuning into our newest episode of Beers with Bros. On these episodes, we do get together in person, which we don't normally do, and talk about the content. Today's episode is Key Peele. Thanks for listening. I just want to give you guys a heads up. The audio is not perfect. We're still not in an ideal recording situation whenever we meet up. We still need to invest in some equipment for the episodes where we're together. So just be patient with us as this stuff is expensive. And we've really got the regular show on lockdown as far as audio goes, and we're really proud of what we're doing there. For the together episodes, we still want to do them. We like hanging out with each other when we get the opportunity to. So please bear with the audio. It does get a little better towards the end of the episode, but I won't belabor the point. Please follow us on all the social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Also, go ahead and send us your feedback to Pop-O-Holics@gmail.com, and go ahead and leave us your 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. We read those every week. All that being said, we hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Pop-O-Holics.
Welcome to Pop-O-Holics, the show about hot takes, hotter than pancakes, where we're diving deep divers. Welcome to a special Beers with Bros!
Scuba Squad
edition. And it's just the core cast today. I am your host, as always, Mr. Christian Katie, joined as always by
Chris Conkling
and Brian Dupree,
my faithful friends. We have loyal listeners and faithful friends.
LLs and FFs.
For life, FL. LL.
LLs, FFs.
LF. No.
FL.
NFL.
Come from Florida. So.
NFL, not NFL.
Concussions.
Great start.
Always smooth at the start.
This is good. This means we'll have a good ending. We are here today, we gather here today, to drink beers and to enjoy bros. But we're still open to women. We've made this clear before. We may have women guests in the future. If you're a woman and you're interested, come on down. With, what we came at? Liquor with ladies? Was that?
I don't remember that being a thing.
We should have added it to the list.
Yeah, on the Mandy Pod.
Yeah.
People have already turned this episode off. We are talking today about, it is March Madness. We're getting crazy. We are talking about all of Jordan Peele's work. And we are going to be talking about Key Peele, kind of the explosion of Jordan Peele's career and Keegan-Michael Key. And we're going to be talking about cinematic sketch comedy. We're going to be talking about sketch comedy of all sorts. How this show fits into the pantheon, what it means for his career, the impact, comparisons, what they did cool, what we find interesting, generation.
When?
Then we're going to remember when. But first, we always start the way we always do, which is what we've been consuming, and then we go into our weekly poll, and then we go into the main topic. First, a little bit of housekeeping. We started this whole March Madness centered around the release of Us, which was supposed to come out by now, but it has not, and it was delayed. I am going to be in Mexico during the release of Us, and...
Subtle brag.
Come to find out, getting away for a bit, going out with the lady and the family. It's going to be a real amazing, good time off of work. But they're not showing Us in Mexico for the foreseeable future, not even a release date, which is not a surprise. It's a mainly African-American cast in Latin America, and it is also a Blumhouse low-budget horror film. So they really get most of the Disney stuff and a lot of the mainstream Warner Brothers stuff, and that's about it. They get a lot of those translations and stuff. So I'm not going to be able to see it while I'm out of the country, so we're going to postpone that. We will not be on time next week. Wednesday's episode will be delayed, but it is to deliver you a wonderful new episode where we cover Us. But that being said, we are going to get into our topics. We're also going to be interrupted by a pizza man. This is the show about Calamity. It's a calamity-filled podcast.
He may do a short spot depending on how he's feeling.
Yeah,
he or she. This could be our first liquor with ladies.
We're gonna ask the person, have you seen Key Peele? And do you have any thoughts you'd like to share on our podcast? I think that's a great idea. He's totally gonna be down. He's totally not busy tonight delivering pizzas on St. We're recording this on
doing their job at all.
We're recording this on St. Patty's Day.
Happy St. Patty's, everyone.
Happy St. Patty's.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Brian's wearing green. I'm wearing blue.
I realized today that I own no green clothing anymore.
Boom.
And my wife was supposed to make me a little sticker to wear, but she didn't.
It was all burned after the 2014 event on Patty's Day that we will not discuss on the pod. But
I looked at Mickey and
I
looked at Mickey and I said,
you actually said that to her, though. You actually said that.
No.
More on that later. So we're going to be getting into what we've been consuming the past week. Brian, you have Supergods by Grant Morrison. I'm assuming this is some sort of book. Some sort of book with pictures.
It's got a couple pictures, actually. Yeah. After last week, I felt completely just intellectually lazy when you guys were like, oh, I'm reading both these books. You guys have new books this week. I'm like, okay, I got to tighten up and get to my reading. This is a Christmas present that I've been meaning to get to. It's kind of an autobiography by Grant Morrison, who's a very famous comics author. He's one of the major DC writers right now. But it's also a story about comics and how they've progressed over time. I've only pretty much read the first chapter at this point, and it's called The Sun God and the Dark Knight. And it's showing how Superman was kind of this product of the Great Depression. People needed a hero
a symbol of hope.
A symbol of hope to get through the dark times, exactly. And he very much describes them as archetypes, that he compares Superman to like an Apollo or a Zeus who uses a human form to deal with people and stay involved in their dramas and their plots. And he's very much the sun god, like in the daytime, shows his face, saving things, where Batman would be, I think he compares him to Dionysus, which I'm not too familiar with the mythology, but he's kind of getting into this. It's the night realm. It's the darker, grittier side of justice. He actually, in this one, has compared Superman to, originally at least, more of a socialist, utopian ideal, whereas Batman would be the capitalist side of things. So it's really opened up my eyes to some pizza-inspired thoughts. For the record, we did not get any hot takes.
Damn shame.
Just hot pizza. So yeah, Morrison is giving this really interesting breakdown of comics history. He breaks down in the first chapter both the original Superman and Batman covers and just the implications behind the art. He gets into how Siegel and Schuster really changed the medium, and by establishing Superman's powers early on, which were a lot less than he became, I think it was like an eighth of a mile leap at a time and things like this. But because of those things, he talks about how there's implied action in between panels. That was something that was very new, where you could change location and Superman got there somehow because of his powers. And there's this imaginative effort that comes from interacting with the comic. And I'm just really excited to see where it goes. I'm a big fan of most of the Morrison stuff that I've read. So, excited to keep digging into this one.
That sounds awesome.
I don't want to derail you too much, but I think it's interesting. What I caught on to is this idea of making Superman not as powerful as Superman is, which I think is the 100% right way to go with any of these characters that are super overpowered. It's been a problem.
Yeah.
And all of the superhero stuff is this level of power matching, and obviously I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe has done it the best of giving characters things to do and making them up against opponents
vulnerable.
that are at their exactly. And I think that's super cool. I think I don't think enough Superman stuff has. Most of the Superman stuff I've been exposed to is like, oh no, he's just super powerful, and then it's kryptonite. Now he's worse than a man. It's like he's either invincible or a baby.
Right.
Well, I mean that's also I think that came from comic book writers having to change the stories that they were telling about Superman over time and gradually build on his power set. Because what Brian's saying is at the very beginning, from Siegel and Schuster, they wrote him the way they wanted to. They were the originators, So I mean, the power set that they ended up coming up with was less than say what he has contemporarily.
Right.
So now he's like way too overpowered compared to like how he was when he first came about.
Right, and they even contextualize things like superheroes' costumes and how today they can look kind of silly and contrived, but back then people would have been familiar with these sideshow acts of strongmen.
Based on like strongmen and wrestlers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is something that they already associated with power symbols, and it's the kind of perspective he's bringing to it is something that I really appreciate, having not dug into the history of some of the older ages of comics as much and getting into more of the modern stuff.
Very cool.
Very cool.
So that's Grant Morrison's Supergods, and that's new?
It came out in 2012, actually.
2012?
So it's new to me, but definitely been around for a while.
Cool. How many issues is that?
Well, it's actually a novel.
It's a book.
Yeah,
Oh, it's a book.
well, not a novel, but a book, right? Yeah, I would say it's nonfiction for the most part, and he just throws in elements of his life. He starts off talking about his childhood and stuff, being raised in the Cold War era. His parents were very much like anti-nuclear, and he was involved in protests and stuff too, which is stuff that I've seen him talk about in interviews and things like that. Pretty wild story, but yeah, it's an exciting one.
That's super cool. So that leads into what I watched a little bit. Sorry, I didn't put this in the show notes, but I went with Chris. We had a day off, and we had some time to kill. We went and saw Captain Marvel, so I'm catching up. I know we talked about it a little more last week, so I won't believe. Yeah, we have the cup. We have a big popcorn cup. Yeah, Chris got this insane combo to get a Captain Marvel themed cup. And then he didn't want the...
I was like, I want a drink in that Captain Marvel cup. And she was like, hey, it's actually part of this combo. So
you
if
have
you want
to
the
get
cup, you need the bucket. And then I was
food.
like, well, why not?
We had just eaten food, so we were not hungry in the least bit.
Sitting in the theater with this giant bucket of popcorn, like, you wanna eat some of this? I can't eat any more of this.
It's very empty now.
Well, it is. And my girlfriend definitely needs one because she loves a nice little popcorn snack while we're watching stuff. So I definitely took it off his hands. This is like $10 for a...
Oh, it's refillable.
Well, by me.
Okay, all right. You're at home use. Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure while Captain Marvel's playing, we can confuse some of them if we sneak it in, but that is not the goal of the Captain Marvel thing. Anyway, so I saw the movie, and overall, it's very meh. Very along the lines of Thor for me. It's like enjoyable. It's definitely bold the way they start it with so much sci-fi. It's a tribute to how modern audiences are just like, yeah, whatever, like weird blue people and space things. But I found it really just the way Thor was, very generic, and it does not do the Ridley Scott immersion of where you're at in a very foreign place. Ridley Scott does this wonderful thing with set design and ambiance and making you feel like you're in a place. They do not accomplish that in any way, but once they get to Earth, it becomes a movie again because they're shooting in real locations and it doesn't feel like a CGI cluster F. That's not to say they do it terribly, it's just not very convincing. And I thought Brie Larson, she does a great job with what she has, but I don't think there's much of a character arc there. So a little disappointing there. Some people have given arguments to the counterpoint of how she is an emotional ride of being herself, and that's great. I didn't feel that in the journey, and I didn't feel like she had much of an arc. To me, she was never really in danger. Typical superhero problems of didn't feel like stakes. There is a very gripping scene of her in a fighter jet, and I wish there was more of that. I wish this was more of Top Gun with a lady. I think that would have been very apt, and I really enjoyed. We saw it in Limax, and there was a scene where there's a lot of emotional stakes, and you're learning a lot about the backstory. And I think it's riveting. And it's mostly CG and close-ups. And it's not... But it's done really effectively. The sound design's really good. I really enjoyed that scene. I think that was the most exciting part about it. And no spoilers, but towards the end there's a scene where things get very larger than life. And I think that's pretty well done.
We'll talk about spoilers during our MCU retrospective.
So we'll get into it. But I don't want to spoil it while people are still watching it. Yeah. We will be spoiling Key and Peele later, so just heads up there. But overall, yeah, thought it was okay. Very much okay. I'm very excited to see her in Endgame.
As am I.
Yeah. I think I'm more excited to see what the Russos do with her, for sure. So good. Any thoughts on that? You guys shared your thoughts.
I think we pretty much shared our thoughts last week. Did
you guys agree with what I said?
Absolutely. I enjoyed the movie. It was a very middle-of-the-road superhero movie for me. It wasn't as bad as some of the worst movies that Marvel has made. It wasn't as good as some of the best movies they've made. Would I watch it again? 100%. I would definitely revisit this film. So it was by no means something that
you already have 3 times.
I have watched it 3 times.
You're the only one who would see a mediocre Marvel film 3 times in theaters.
Exactly.
I'm seeing this again next week, to be fair.
I'm also seeing it again next week with my wife because she was away on a business trip when it came out. But
just because Disney needs more money, they really do need more money.
They're the underdogs at this point. I really want to fund
support the
project.
mouse. Yeah. Support the mouse. I think after having listened to some podcasts discussing this movie afterwards,
not actually seeing the movie, but actually the commentary afterwards has convinced you that you like it. Please proceed.
No, not. Okay, so as a man watching this movie, there were elements to it that the first time through, I didn't pick up in terms of how she's treated by the male characters and her emotional growth and how she's allowed to express her emotion throughout the movie. And I think the character arc is us coming to terms while she does with who she is, where she's from, and all of that. And I think that's something that really did work for me in terms of arc. Just the visual stuff in it I love, too. The way space travel is presented as like inter-realm travel or something like that. That whole thing was kind of really cool to me, I think.
Really small note, and I was going to save it for our MCU retrospective, but I love that they keep in continuity the jump gate design between this film and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So there is like an overall consistent technology to how space travel works in the MCU, which I just think is super cool.
No, this proves, for this, what is this, the 25th movie?
21st, I believe.
21st. For that many movies, for it to be somewhat consistent, obviously there's logical leaps and all sorts of questions we can ask after seeing this. Despite all that, it's incredible that a movie stays, like, that this series has stayed as consistent as it is. I think it's a tribute to their overall team and Paul Feig?
Kevin Feige.
Who's Paul Feig?
He's a
director.
He's a writer-director.
Yeah, Kevin Feige, excuse me. But if you want to hear more about that, we talked about it last week, and we have a whole MC leading up to Endgame. Next month is all Marvel. If you're into that, that's going to be what we're covering. And
hopefully they don't push the date back a week. Ayo.
I don't think they will for lots of... I believe that it's already sold out worldwide. It's going to make $3 billion. Also, a retcon from last week, and this will be the last thing on Captain Marvel, is that it is snowballed, and just like Wonder Woman, it's just kind of kept making more and more money. And I believe it's now like over 600 million domestic or something.
Solid word of mouth stuff for that.
Not 600 million domestically.
Worldwide, maybe.
Last weekend when I checked, like opening weekend, it was 153 million domestically, over 400 million.
That's still insane.
Worldwide.
Yeah, it's got legs.
It's like the second biggest opening for a Marvel film.
Thing that Brie Larson and Gal Gadot have in common: they got legs, baby.
Oh no! That 9 Inch Nails shirt too. Come on.
Sorry, the ladies. What can I say? The beautiful women. They are, though. By the way, both beautiful women. I'm just gonna put it out there.
They have legs in terms of how long lasting their films
I'm
are,
very
right?
attracted.
Not a controversial.
All right, wait. Who's before I go on to my next thing, which I'll keep very brief because we've already gone very long. Who's hotter? Brie Larson, Gal Gadot. I know this is a very man thing, but it's Beers with Bros. We talk about broads, all right?
Brie Larson.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, I'd probably have to say Gal Gadot personally.
Yeah, I'm kind of into like the whole Israeli Jewish girl thing. So my girlfriend's Jewish, so she's got that in spades over Brie Larson. But Brie Larson, very hot. Brie Larson's like the hot girl who's also pretty interesting. Gal Gadot's like, I'm gonna wife that woman.
All right,
or she's gonna husband me.
So to take it,
Gal Gadot's gonna husband me.
You'd let her propose to
I'd
you.
let her propose to me.
Seems more accurate.
She can drive. She can do whatever she wants.
To take it away from the completely superficial, who's the better actress or actor?
Brie Larson, 100%.
I think so too.
I think
Oscar winning.
Yeah.
Gal Gadot hasn't.
I still haven't seen.
Okay, I'm just ignorant. Another uncontroversial call here.
I still haven't seen Four Rooms. Is that what it's called? Or The Room? It's not
Room.
Room. It's just Room. Because I knew
Room.
Yeah, Tommy Wiseau. Great.
It's not The Room. It's just
Brilliant
Room.
performances by Brie Larson.
But I know. I would say that just based on Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel, I think that Gal Gadot's in the better film, but Brie Larson is a better actress just based on that. I think Brie Larson elevates pretty mediocre material, and Gal Gadot really lands what she was doing, and so I think it's more impressive the other way around. But I've heard more critically acclaimed things from Brie Larson, and I've seen her in a couple things, and I would say she takes the cake on acting potential.
Boom.
But as far as wife material, Gal Gadot, for sure.
Gotta love that 90s grunge look, man.
Yeah. Oh god, can we talk about? Oh god, I can't wait till the introspective, the extra.
Retrospective.
Retrospective is the word of Beers Bros of the MCU because all the music in Captain Marvel is terrible. Like the way the music's good and it's just used in such a terrible way. It's like worse than Suicide Squad. Anyway,
But you'll hear more about that.
We'll hear more about that. Anyway, those are my opinions. If you enjoy anything, if you really enjoyed Captain Marvel, God bless you. Enjoy it. I think it's awesome that you enjoy it. Okay, moving on. I've been playing Tom Clancy's The Division 2. I know you thought this was a book, probably.
I did.
As you said that, I am still reading *Sapiens*, which is the book from last week. It's still very good. I still like it. But I'm playing The Division 2, which is the newest looter shooter by Ubisoft. And it's the same kind of game as Anthem, but take out all the supernatural, javelin flying, Iron Man stuff. And this game is more solid on every level. This is their second time around doing this. And it doesn't kick me out of games, and it works, and the missions are designed well, and it makes sense why I'm in this world, and I feel all the things that I addressed on that bonus episode about Anthem just not feeling like a world. This feels like a world. The only problem is I'm not flying around in a mech suit. I'm just like a dude with like a machine gun. But despite all that, I thought I wasn't going to like it just because of that. It lands everything else so well. Go play this game if you're into if you liked Borderlands in the past, you like Destiny, and I would say even if you're just slightly interested in the aesthetic, the idea is that Washington D.C. the whole world has like fallen and it's kind of post-apocalyptic, and you're part of a secret organization that takes back that, and what it does is like the whole story is kind of just like this setup for you being in D.C. having to overtake sections, very much like, do you remember the game Freedom Fighters?
No, I don't.
Old game where you had to take back a city from like Russians or whatever. This game
Freedom Fighters
is all disparate like gangs that have popped up and you're fighting, and that whole story is not that interesting. But what is interesting is all the little side missions and all of the missions you're going on. They make sense contextually. You meet characters while you're on it. You're not that special. You're like, hello, agent. You're just an agent, and you just take missions, and they're like, thank you, agent. And as you walk by, people go, isn't that the agent that did that? And they comment on the things that you just did, and so it feels very unique to your play, even though it's everybody. It's great. It's all the things Anthem didn't do right. This does right.
You're not Earth's savior.
But I wish I was on a damn Mac, and I wish they could. Anthem could learn a lot from this game. Anyway, thoughts on Division 2. Chris, have you guys heard of the Division 2? No. You thought it was a book. Anyway,
sorry.
Looter shooter, Tom Clancy stuff. I give it a 2 thumbs way up. Still playing it, only about 8 hours in, and it's a lot of fun. Chris, you've been reading the.
I've been reading.
So
I love that.
Flying through books. Is this not a book either?
It is a book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I loved it, but I just want a disclaimer. I love that Brian hyped up the fact that I'm reading another book this week. Truth be told,
Thanos is another video game.
It's fiction. And it's called Thanos Titan Consumed.
It's a children's book.
I hope there are so many pictures. I hope I'm pronouncing the author's last name correctly, but it's written by Barry Lyga, and it is supposed to take place within the MCU. So it's basically like an origin novel about Thanos, his time on Titan.
It's twist off.
Is it twist off?
Yeah.
Oh. Thought I was so prepared. What were you saying, Chris?
I was just talking about Thanos Titan Consumed. And how it... So, it's basically a novel about Thanos' origin. So if you saw Infinity War and you wanted to know more about his origin, his time on Titan before it became like a desolate planet, how he came in contact with the Chitauri, the alien army that he used in the first Avengers movie.
And this is in MCU canon?
So here's the deal. When the book was originally being written, the author and the publisher thought that they were writing a book that was supposed to be within the canon universe of the MCU. However, once the book was released, Marvel, for whatever reason, was basically like, shut that shit down, release the book, but it's not official canon for our universe, which I think is crazy because the MCU has gotten so big. We're at a point now where it's rivaling Star Wars, where it's creating like extended universe stories almost that like aren't canon but could be canons, like however you want to.
They're separate enough to be not super consequential, but they can still.
Right. There is nothing in this
comic
novel
book problem, which is just an explosion of writers and all that stuff.
Right, but there's nothing in this novel that contradicts anything that we've seen in the MCU. Yet. At this, to date, it doesn't contradict anything within the MCU. Who's to say what happens in the future with those films? It could potentially contradict things later on. But right now, if you want to get more of the backstory that we missed out on in Infinity War with Thanos, like I thought Thanos was a sympathetic, I'm not crazy, but I thought he was
we've talked about this. You're a genocidal maniac.
A sympathetic villain in Infinity War. You could see where he's coming from. Having read this novel, you can absolutely 100% see how he came to the conclusion that gathering the Infinity Stones and wiping out half of the universe's population was the best way to accomplish what he thought was...
Spoilers for Avengers pregame.
Right. Avengers pregame. Yes. Anyway, if you're an MCU fan, I definitely recommend reading this book. It's written really well. When I go into books like this, my main worry is that it's going to sound like fan fiction.
Yeah.
But it's actually very well written. If you enjoy just like sci-fi novels, like if you are a fan of the Star Wars Extended Universe, or if you've read any like Arthur C. Clarke stuff, like it's just a fun sci-fi book. So definitely.
To your knowledge, are there any ongoing MCU canon comics?
No. So
interesting, because Star Wars is going pretty bananas with all those.
Dude, the Marvel comics or the Star Wars comics that Marvel's releasing right now are so good, and they are technically within the canon.
I started reading Darth Vader a little bit, and it was solid. Yeah,
it's like way better than it has any right to be. But yeah, what Marvel typically does with comics in the MCU is they'll release like a prelude story. So it could sometimes be like the recap of what happened in a movie in comic book form, or back in the day before Avengers came out, they actually released a comic called Fury's Big Week, which actually depicted different agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. going around and coming into contact with like Thor and the Incredible Hulk and like all these characters prior to Avengers taking place. So it really did kind of like fit in as a prequel to that film. But I mean, that was like early MCU days. But no, to answer your question, they don't do a lot of that anymore.
And that way it leaves them free to pull from like 4 or 5 different arcs and blend things.
Right, exactly.
You know, which they tend to do.
I'm surprised by that. I would assume,
yeah, you'd think that
ignorantly, that there would be lots of cash in for this MCU.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like comics typically aren't a super cash cow in the way that movies can be, right?
Yeah,
they're obviously much more consistent, but in terms of building this giant
but you have
universe,
such
it's
a
a little
dedicated
harder.
fan base to this stuff.
But are the same people that read the comics and dedicated to that the same people who read the movies?
No,
I think these days it's not
Venn
as
diagram.
much. Oh, no doubt about that.
Chris is in that center part where both of them are like a dollar sign.
Sure, but
have you read any of the Star Wars comics?
I have, yeah.
He's in that diagram.
No,
and it's
sure.
a fraction, but they're going to sell comics more than a new up and coming comic. If Disney releases a comic book, you know, it's going to get a lot of traction, especially
for sure.
I mean, because they've held out so long. I feel like it would be really exciting.
I think even more so than that, though. Like, for instance, when a movie like Captain Marvel comes out, if someone who's only familiar with the MCU goes to see Captain Marvel and they're like, man, I really like that character. Wow, that character really resonates with me. They might seek out their local comic book store and then buy trade paperbacks of the storylines that inspired that particular...
And maybe it's better that, you know, you have all these writers to do what they want and they don't have to be beholden to the whims. Obviously, we've seen problems with that. The MCU trying to stay together kind of limits artistry and has pushed some people out. But it also has allowed people to come back in, which this isn't not a what do we consume, but it's about beep, 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 breaking news.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard this, then we're your only source of pop culture news.
Yeah, I would say don't depend on us for this type of news.
That's exciting if we're breaking this to you. If you're finding out by this based on us, we're doing a good thing. We're making progress. But James Gunn,
unholstered.
After every single cast member and every single person has said, bring him back, Disney finally said, yeah, we brought him back. And by the way, we decided this months ago, but we were hoping it blew over. It was like the most chicken shit bring back ever. Like
he started getting other jobs, man. They realized he wasn't blackballed by everyone.
He did. Warner Brothers scooped him up for Suicide Squad 2, or technically it's called The Suicide Squad. So it's like a soft reboot.
What the hell?
They're getting so lazy with the titles. It's rough.
I think Warner Brothers has been like, you know what? Let's lean into our strengths, which is let's not give any shit.
Warner Brothers, actually. No.
The Warner Brothers.
The next gen.
Well, it's the idea they're going to have this whole dark universe, and they're kind of just like, you know what? The whole us doing canon wasn't great. What if we just made good movies? It's like, yeah, Warner Bros. What if we just made good movies? Let's start there.
What a notion. Anyway.
I know you're a defender of the Warner Brothers, but I think they are best when they are just doing their own thing.
Regardless of Disney's decision, to fire him and rehire him, however that rehiring came about. I am very, very excited that James Gunn is back and he's going to be helming Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. That franchise
But
is
why?
his
Why is
baby.
everybody so excited? Guardians 2 was not that good.
That's a personal opinion.
It is not.
Well, it is.
It is a personal
Let's be
opinion.
clear.
This whole podcast is personal.
It did not. No. It did not have
saying
the
it was critically
reception.
panned.
It was critically not as successful, and audience scored as high as the first Guardians, which is for a lot of reasons outside the control of Gunn. But it wasn't as fresh, and it was redundant, and it had some really great stuff in it. Don't get me wrong. I want to say there is more good stuff in Guardians 2 than in all of Ant-Man and the Wasp and a lot of other MCU stuff, and I'd argue it's a slightly better movie than Captain Marvel. Not saying that, but I don't know if he's got anything else left in the can. I'm excited. I trust him.
So the reason I'm excited is more so than any other director attached to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy films
Flipping coins throughout the entire episode.
They exude James Gunn. Like, you can feel he has a vision, right? And his vision shines through. Kind of like Taika Waititi with Thor Ragnarok. Like, there are very few films within the MCU that actually stick out.
The director hides behind the rest of the movie a lot of times.
Marvel has a formula. They like to stay within that formula very often. But James Gunn has a vision, and thankfully his vision has been allowed by Disney.
Well, we'll discuss this more in the upcoming MCU. Brian, I'll give you a platform to say your piece on the James Gunn rehiring.
No, I mean, I just...
No, tell me what you told me before we started the podcast. Tell me what you told me before we started the podcast.
Well, I feel like Disney, if they were going to get rid of him completely, they even after they fired him from directing, they were still going to use his script. His name was still going to be attached to the project. It seemed a little bit silly to me to make one decision and not the other and just keep him on at that point. In terms of the validity of him being fired, that's a more debatable thing. I mean, I think we need to get to a point where everything we do in the public eye, we have a little more awareness of the implications and what we should and shouldn't be openly joking about or even glorifying to some degree.
In the case of James Gunn, I really do think that this entire situation does set precedent within Hollywood.
Right.
And that the tweets that he initially released were from a decade ago. He was coming right out of trauma. Like, he had no affiliation with Disney. He wasn't making family-friendly films.
Out of trauma?
Trauma. The film studio that made
I'm not familiar.
Like edgy horror films and stuff.
To be fair, I haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy either, so I have no connection to James Gunn outside
was
of
a
this.
studio that made snuff films.
So
Alfonso Cuarón's Trauma.
These tweets from a decade ago, he was pretty much just trying
all
to be
in blue and green.
just trying to be like a provocateur.
Okay.
So like he didn't
that was his brand.
Yeah, didn't do any of these things that he was tweeting about. But he even apologized like a decade ago about
After
his
that?
tweets.
Okay.
Before he got lit
before
up.
he was even hired by Disney to do the first Guardians of the Galaxy.
So they didn't even do their due diligence,
But
and now they're going to go back in.
Wasn't it like a right wing?
It was like a right wing
Yeah.
journalism attack against him to try and shut him down because he was saying
And that was
things
happening with a
about
lot of
President
people.
Trump.
I know there's a bunch of directors going through and deleting tons of their tweets after that happened.
So more than anything, what I think this story, why I think this story is so interesting, is because it shows something that you very rarely see within the studio system or corporations in general, which is there is room for second chances.
Going back after a knee-jerk type thing. Sure, yeah, that's true.
Which is something that rarely happens.
Especially when you have a multi-billion-dollar series.
Right. I'm not going to say that
Money
stuff
talks.
doesn't play a role.
Literally,
But-
your whole audience was like, we won't see the movie you release if he's not the director.
But not everybody thought that. A lot of people were very accepting of him being fired because they didn't think his tweets were acceptable.
I agree, but in the circles that I would say that we, more than the average consumer, are tapped into film culture and criticism. It's why we do this podcast, is because we're into that and we're becoming part of that. And I would say most of the people I listen to on the Slash Film and on Twitter and all the film people there are like, yeah, you shouldn't have said that. They're questionable. They're not in good taste. But geez, bring them back. Well, it's hard to make decisions in this world, and we ask our audience to make a decision every week in a poll.
Today.
What a segue.
Guys, I'm getting good at this. I'm getting a little confident. We had a weekly poll, and we talked about Get Out. We've been talking about Jordan Peele, and Get Out obviously is making a lot of statements about the African American community in the United States and around the world. And in the same year, was it the same year? Black Panther.
They came out in the same year.
Black Panther comes out, same thing, inspiring young Black America all over the world that you too can be a superhero. Really inspiring stuff. So we asked our audience, what is more culturally relevant, Black Panther or Get Out? And I was shocked. Chris, what are the results?
So, just like I do every week, thank you guys so much for everybody who participated. Our new poll days, our new poll release days are going to be Mondays. That way you guys have more time to vote on the podcast. And we like
all 17 of you, which I think is a new. Is that a new record?
It's one short of our previous record, which is 18.
Okay,
but still, thank you all 17 of you.
A record for this poll.
Yes, it is a record for this specific poll.
Number
17 votes. We posed this question to you: which was more socially impactful, Get Out or Black Panther? And you guys said Get Out is a more impactful film than Black Panther. And you know what? I think I agree. 65% to 35% said Get Out was the winner. What do you guys think?
Oh, they kind of pulled ahead a bit, because for a while it was over 70 to 30.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Some Black Panther.
Black Panther came back just a little bit.
See, this is a tough one because I'll admit I did vote for Get Out. I feel like for me personally, it was much more effective in terms of cultural awareness. But what Black Panther is and the representation that it brings to what I would argue is definitely a much larger audience than a movie like Get Out has. The implications of it will probably, over the long term, be bigger for representation on screen. But in terms of, the social message, there's no question that Get Out is a step above.
Yeah, I agree. Christian, what do you think?
I think they're both really impactful. I think Black Panther is going to inspire, young kids around the world, just like Spider-Man into Spider-Verse did, that people of color are also capable of doing great things, and I think that's really inspirational. And I think, like Brian, I'm not going to argue. I think overall, because it just has a wider audience, that it's going to have a better impact, a more widespread impact. But I will say, I think Get Out has a better impact on white people. I think that watching Get Out makes a lot of people that are not of color, or not part of a minority group, really look at themselves and how they behave a little more closely. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a different type of impact. I think one is impressive because it's impactful for a more mature audience, but it's a more specific audience. Whereas I think Black Panther, like you said, Brian, it's overall, I think it's going to impact a little broader.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
That's it? You just agree? Your thoughts?
I already gave my thoughts.
Pop-O-Holics!
Thank you guys for voting. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much
Yes,
for voting.
thank you.
You can find those polls on Facebook. We appreciate you guys contributing to the conversation. We have these polls every week. What's our poll coming up? Have we decided?
We haven't decided yet, but you will definitely see it tomorrow. And by tomorrow, I mean in the past.
2 days ago.
2 days ago, you will have seen.
By tomorrow, I mean not tomorrow. You have already seen it, and we're excited that you're going to vote on it. Oh, what a hard decision it is between those two things
That we definitely know.
that we definitely have prepared for.
Yes, absolutely.
Guys, I'm hungry for some pizza. We're gonna drink some more beer, so we're gonna come back a little drunker.
It's going to be a sloppy second half. Let's just say that.
sloppy second on Beers with Bros. This is Beers with Bros, where we drink and commune in person or across Skype. And today is in person.
Talking around the table.
Talking around the table. So we're going to take a quick break.
But before we take a break, when you're tired of listening to Pop-O-Holics,
Bring it back.
when you're tired of listening to Pop-O-Holics, why don't you head on over to Fox News? Or if you're tired of Fox News, go ahead and tune into Talkin' Tesla.
There it
Or
is.
maybe if you're a little bored with Talkin' Tesla, go ahead and take a little gander at Talkin' Teen. Or perhaps Chalices and Phalluses. Maybe tune into Inside the Pod. Or if you're interested in books, you find yourself to be a bookworm, go ahead and take a listen to Little Bookcast.
Little book.
If you're bored with books, take a look at What's in the Pantry, or maybe even Team. But if you're bored with all of that,
Wasn't one.
go ahead and tune in
Team.
to Talking Round the Table.
Talking round the table.
we can't use talking again. We've already got several talking.
Go ahead and tune in to Talking Round the Table.
Talking?
Talking.
Conklin around the table.
Go ahead and 2 ninjas conklin around the table.
It's official. It's in the books. I thought we buried all this. I especially thought we buried the word teen. Thought that has been buried long ago.
We drove it home.
Leave it out.
I know. Thank you for giving me stuff to do. Well, we'll be back with none of that and more of what we've been talking about Jordan Peele when we come back on Pop-O-Holics. And we're back.
And Terry's won't know what hit him.
Getting real froggy.
We're back talking Key and Peele. This is March Madness, and we're talking about the breakout sketch comedy show Key and Peele. And we're going to talk about our history of sketch comedy and Key and Peele, evolution of the format and what they do different and how it's important. And then we're going to talk in our opinions on Key and Peele specifically. You know what I realized from watching Key and Peele, guys?
What'd you realize, Christian?
I've seen most of it, and I didn't realize how much I watched until I started trying to go through and find episodes
That you hadn't seen.
that I hadn't seen. And I was like, I think I've seen every single sketch this has, and it was a big refresher course on all these legendary epic sketches that I watched. What's your history with Key and Peele and sketch comedy? Chris, let's start with you.
My history with sketch comedy goes way back. When I was a kid, a lot of kids in the 90s will remember the show All That. That was my first introduction to sketch comedy. And I always viewed All That as like a child-friendly SNL, basically. So
It does not hold up. I don't think...
I haven't gone back and watched any of the sketches.
It's not for adults, right?
True, it's not for
gotta
adults.
consider that.
And I think it's actually getting a revival as
Yeah,
well.
but so is a lot of children's. Like, I look back at it, and I don't look fondly on it. And maybe that's just me. If you've recently gone back to All That, and you have different opinions, I would say it's just, you know, you can look at children, like, we can watch The Lion King and be like, yeah, it's not for adults, but there's a lot to
There's
it.
quality, there's value to
There's
it.
a lot of value to watching Lion King as a 30-year-old man. Whereas All That, I'm not sure there's any value.
No,
other
it's
than
all
nostalgia.
it's definitely all like juvenile humor. Like they knew who their demographic was, you know. So I mean, naturally after All That, I kind of graduated. I remember watching SNL on syndication on Comedy Central back in like the late '90s, early 2000s, where they had episodes with like Mike Myers and Dana Carvey, Adam Sandler. Those were all in syndication. And then finally I graduated to like full-fledged SNL, so where I was actually watching it live at 12 o'clock in middle school and high school. Sketch comedy in general has always been a huge part of my life, and I've always, when I was younger, I wanted to be on SNL. Like, I wanted to be a comedy writer or an improv actor. I really gravitated
You still can.
toward... I still could, you're absolutely right. And in college, you remember Christian and I tried to do sketch comedy for a little while.
Lauren Michaels hit us up.
Yeah, let's do it.
I think that you'd be perfect for... I'm doing literally an impression.
That's an okay Lorne Michaels impression.
Lorne Michaels.
Yeah, so I mean, sketch comedy's always been a huge part of my life. In college, I went back and visited the state, and The Whitest Kids You Know. The Chappelle Show was big at the tail end of me being in high school. So I mean, the sketch comedy is a consistent part of who I am in my life, and I get a lot of enjoyment out of it.
Brian, tell us about your history of sketch comedy and Key and Peele.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much in the same boat as Chris in terms of All That being my first real initiation into sketch comedy. I was more into late night shows like during the week growing up, more so the Conan O'Briens, the Jay Leno's and stuff like that. So there would be...
We're not doing late night tonight, bro.
Hey, I'm just saying.
There's sketch involved. There's sketches.
There's
I'll allow it.
Sometimes.
Sketch-ish. I'm just saying in terms of my late night media consumption, SNL was never something that I gravitated towards every week. There were some sketches that I would watch here and there that I would enjoy, but I really got into sketch comedy more so in the YouTube era of things like Whitest Kids You Know. I'm not sure if you mentioned Derek Comedy, but we had talked about that before.
Yeah.
And that was definitely a big introduction for me. And people like Kenan Thompson going from all that to SNL was definitely something that I was aware of was interesting to me. Key and Peele is something I got into in college. I feel like both Key and Peele and Chappelle's Show, I was a little late to the game. Chappelle's Show was a little bit like later high school for me, early college, digging into the original run of that. Well, the only run of that. And I was a big fan of Key and Peele in college. Same thing with you, Christian. Going back, I was flipping through episodes trying to find something that I clearly hadn't seen. And nearly every episode I was like, oh, I recognize half these sketches. So definitely something that didn't immediately stand out in my memory. But going back to it, I was like, yeah, okay. I'm very familiar with all this and undeniably a fan.
Just to circle back, because I didn't answer Christian's question about what's my history with Key and Peele, I have also seen every episode of Key and Peele, and I've watched numerous sketches plenty of times.
I think that sketch comedy is the reason that we have things like YouTube and YouTube content creators. I think it is such a bare bones form of short film storytelling. I think it's the most successful form of short film within popular culture. Naturally, Key and Peele sketches, they're done very cinematically, which is something we're going to talk about later. And I really think it draws on a lot of what we've learned from what works with sketch comedy. And going back, obviously, I was a huge fan of all, as much as I just criticized it and shat on it. I loved all that when I was a kid. It just makes me sad that I look back on it and I'm like, this is not good. This is probably why I'm not funny. But I was a huge SNL fan. My older brother Ryan, he had the best of Chris Farley, the best of Adam Sandler on VHS.
Oh my gosh, I love those VHS.
Those collections before the internet was able to stream video. These were the bomb. These were like they were the equivalent of the YouTube rabbit holes you go down. Where you're like, I want to watch all of old Sandler on sketch, and so
the Farley ones just kill me.
Super great, and I think that SNL has always fostered this creative rush to finish it, and there's a certain energy with SNL that is very unique to the show.
I think that's called cocaine.
And unpolished, a lot of cocaine for sure. But very unique, and like SNL is always, because I had two older brothers, and my oldest brother Ryan is 13 years older than me. So when he was my age now. Let's see, I was like 15. So I was into a lot of stuff that he was seeing as an older young adult. And then later, things like The State, which came out in the mid-90s, I believe, late 90s.
Late 90s, I think.
I discovered that in college, and it was just tapping into this alt-comedy movement that was just catching on in the mainstream. And if you haven't seen The State, there's only a couple seasons.
Highly recommend it.
So funny. Holds up and is literally the type of comedy that was happening maybe like 3 or 5 years ago. That was super hot.
We've neglected to also mention Kids in the Hall, which is... Have either of you seen Kids in the Hall? Sorry to interrupt you, Christian.
No, I have. No. I want to hear your perspective on it, because I have not been able to get into any Kids in the Hall at any stage of my life. I think younger me, mid me, and now me have tried to watch Kids in the Hall, and I just don't get it. It just doesn't click for me.
I'm not sure I've ever seen any of this.
It's what I think The State is called. And then I search for it and I go, oh no, it's not this bullshit. It's called The State.
Right. I don't know why, but I've always kind of closely tied those two shows together. Probably because they came out around the same time, The State and Kids in the Hall. Kids in the Hall is like an all-Canadian sketch comedy troupe. All males, so in sketches where there are women, it's men playing women, which is something you also see a lot in sketch comedy. But I love Kids in the Hall. There are a lot of great comedians that came out.
What's the best Kids in the Hall sketch?
The best Kids in the Hall.
Can you send it to me?
I'll see what I can do.
Ever laughed at a kid. You don't have anything
next week. Christian
oh my god,
Kids.
I have like stereotypical, like cliche Kids in the Hall sketches.
What's your favorite SNL sketch?
Of all time.
What's one that you... Give me a Kids in the Hall that you like, and give me an SNL that you like.
Okay.
Which one is easier? Because the answer is SNL.
SNL. There's so many good SNL sketches, though. Like, both questions I would have to think about.
I've been waiting my entire life for someone to prove to me that Kids in the Hall is funny.
Right. I'll find one.
Maybe it's that Canadian sensibility.
Maybe.
I like Canadians.
That's something that I would say about all that, too. It's like comedy... regardless of the age that it's meant for, is very much of the time that it's made. So
but sometimes, I argue that sometimes, like, The State is so far surpassing and is this universal that's been funny to me since I saw it in college, and was the type of comedy that came into vogue. Mm-hmm. It was this brief thing where these guys were way ahead of what was going to be really funny.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off. But.
No, that's definitely a fair point in terms of influence, yeah. I think it's harder with kids shows generally, but
Yeah, because you're not, you can't make certain jokes, and
there's implications, but yeah, you can't be.
Yeah, especially sketch too. And I don't know if all that, I think it'd be really interesting to look at all that and how old the writers were and how much improv took place and what that set was like.
That would be really interesting to find out. Like, were the kids involved? Because some of them were teenagers. So, I mean, were any of the teenagers involved in writing those sketches? Or was it mostly like an adult writer staff picking which teen comedians they wanted to be in their sketches and, like, doing write-ups for them?
I think the best things that ever, like, came from that were the Keenan and Kel stuff and the Good Burger. Like, that's iconic. And anything with Keenan or Kel, I mean, obviously, Keenan burned out a bit.
Kel burned out. Keenan is
still
a fully fledged working comedian,
and
has been for a long time.
Amanda
Kel
Bynes.
likes orange soda. That's how I should remember.
Amanda
likes
Bynes
orange
got
soda?
Her spin-off show as well.
That's
The
true.
later-
The
later
Amanda
end
Show
of
was also
all
like a
that.
children's sketch comedy.
I would say even Amanda Show probably holds up better. But we'll have to do an old school Nickelodeon retrospect on all those shows. Oh god, there'll be a lot to dive into.
Yeah,
I mean, that's too much work. Never mind.
we're not promising anything,
We're
loyal
not promising. But
listeners.
maybe if you're interested, email us. And if you're interested, we'll do it. We're if you like it, we're here to please.
Goes modern life.
But to continue the sketch comedy thing, I think Chappelle's Show was huge. I think that was a giant leap into the mainstream for like black culture and something that was mainstream successful. For that, I think even to the detriment of what Dave Chappelle would say in interviews later, but really funny stuff. Derek Comedy is kind of, you put this in here and it's interesting because you do see this dispersion of YouTube sketch comedy because it is a low budget short form storytelling, like I was saying before. So it's interesting that a lot of young YouTubers that were making original content stuck to this type of thing, but kept it put it out as one thing at a time, rather than in a collective 30-minute or hour long like collective thing.
I remember Derek being like a turning point in my life where I would have to go to their personal website to see their sketches. I would have to be subscribed to their YouTube channel, and solely because of the way that they were putting out the content, it made it more inclusive. I as a teen at that time, as a young adult, I felt like this is something that I could do as well.
Mm-hmm. They were utilizing the internet in a way that was revolutionary and definitely created something new. And I would say, I think an interesting about sketch comedy generally is the fact that it is this creative hub, but people use it as a platform to create other, sometimes even bigger content than the thing itself. Something Derek Comedy, obviously, Donald Glover now has become this superstar.
Yeah. It's a successful way to try a lot of ideas that don't cost a lot of money, that can be very effective, that can have viral sensation, viral effects if they're successful. And it's a great way to keep practicing at different ideas and executing, I think, for the actors, for the writers, and the people that are directing it and that whole collaboration. These short sketches are a good way to throw an idea at the wall, and maybe it doesn't work, but you'll learn a little bit about recording, like filming it and stuff. And I think that for writers in SNL, it's the same. Most of what I remember from good SNL stuff is after they hit a groove. And it seems that SNL goes in these waves of these groups of people that are putting this together, really hitting a stride and really hitting that from just doing it. I think it's a great practicing realm for actors and collaborators to kind of flex that muscle. But what's really interesting about Derek Comedy as opposed to something like SNL, which I think Key and Peele did a 50-50 of at the beginning, and definitely there's an incorporation, is this idea of live improv, which I think is a separation, and I think you see that with SNL and the younger YouTube stars, of this delineation between improvers and people that are making short films and are entrepreneurial about directing and putting together a vision. And I think the best is always when you get the best of both worlds. You've got a couple people that are really good at the writing and the executing and the filmic aspects, and you really get the great performances, improvisation, funny comedic timing of the actors. I think obviously when all those things are working, you've got a great sketch. And I think Key and Peele encapsulates that very well. And I think just like Chappelle's Show, Whitest Kids You Know, The State, when SNL's clicking, I think that all hits. All that is straight up hot teenage garbage, but we've already discussed that. At
the time, it didn't feel like that.
But that leads us into the kind of the evolution of where the sketch comedy lands with Key and Peele, because I'm trying to think, and maybe I'm wrong, other than maybe some disparate, we're older males, so maybe we're not tapped into what young people are doing with 5-second Facebook live videos or whatever. But as far as sketch comedy goes and these short film writings, I think the biggest splash lately is Key and Peele. And even though it ended in 2017? 16?
15, I think.
They had about 5 seasons.
I think it was 2015.
Yeah, and
5 seasons.
I think that's the biggest new thing that has come about in the short sketch film kind of atmosphere. Maybe there's some YouTube stuff that it's just such a loud echo chamber that there's competing stuff. I'm trying to think of anything that's like...
See, I would point to... I don't know if you guys know Kyle from SNL. He started off as kind of making YouTube videos, and now he's a permanent
Kyle Mooney?
I forget his last name. Yeah, I
the
think
Malk guy? Is he the Malk guy? I don't know who does the Malk thing. One of his big viral things... One of his big viral things was they were drinking milk, but they pronounced it Malk.
Malk?
Anyway.
People have made fun of me for the way I say milk before.
How do you say milk?
I think it's just how you say it. Milk. Like milk instead of milk.
Milk.
Or maybe it's milk instead of milk. Now I don't even know how I say it.
I think it's pronounced Malk.
Yeah, I definitely don't say Malk.
I
M-A-L-K.
Anyway, so Kyle Mooney.
No, yeah, but he was someone who I feel like, I'm not sure what year he got on, but I think it was that same era of getting popular and then coming onto SNL around the same time as Key and Peele.
Well, I mean, we can even take it back to Bobby Moynihan. Bobby Moynihan was a part of Derek Comedy prior to being on SNL. So I mean, there are multiple comedians that started in
like singular
that
careers.
sphere.
But I'm talking about like a project that is a consistent sketch comedy. Is there anything bigger than Key and Peele? Recently, like I can't fit. I feel like other than obviously SNL, which is always good.
I feel like this isn't a part of my
wheelhouse
growing up experience. Okay. And I know very little about it, so I'm probably going to get this very wrong. But I feel like Smosh on YouTube.
Smosh is the Malk people.
Smosh is they're the Malk people.
I'm almost certain.
Okay,
we don't do research on the show.
So they were like a little after my time. But I feel like they were definitely trying to do a similar like sketch comedy thing on YouTube. A little bit after Derek, maybe around the same time. But they're definitely a little younger than us as well, I believe.
But I'm wondering, I'm just spitballing here, this is not planned or prepared very well on a coherent intellectual statement, and I've had like 3 to 5 drinks, 7 drinks. But do you think that we're going in a direction with sketch comedy that it's just going to get shorter? That sketch comedy now is kind of the Vine, Snapchat level, and that's where the next generation's going to come from? Or do we think that will return to form? Because
I think there's still going to be a delineation between like a...
Don't steal my word. That's my word. That's my word for this episode.
And we're talking about 2 different type of platforms. We're talking about Vine, which is also a dead platform. But that was like...
Sure, but we've got things like
6
TikTok
seconds.
is a new thing. You got Snapchat, which is always popular. Instagram limits videos to 60 seconds.
But how much is that driving the modern state of comedy? I'd say it's probably not on the same level as
I would
YouTube
agree. They're 2 very
point.
different things.
Maybe.
I will say, to that point, something like SNL, I feel like it's very, very hit or miss for me in terms of watching an entire episode. I think something like Key and Peele, which is 22 minutes, while it's not completely consistent, it does leave room to have a handful of sketches that are all on a higher caliber than an hour and a half, 2 hour type show.
You have to be an SNL diehard to watch the whole episode.
Yeah, and
I'll sit there and I'll muscle through some sketches. I'll be like, you gotta see the whole thing, man. You gotta know what happened. Just watch the whole show.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to see. I really do think, and fight me on Facebook or whatever, and inform me. Please inform me.
Just interact with us at all.
I really think the last just any level of love or affection or interaction would be wonderful. No, I really do think that I can't think of anything bigger than Key and Peele as the last sketch comedy.
I can't either. I don't think anything has come out
up there for me in terms of what I was watching around the same time.
Yeah, but that's what, 2 seasons, maybe.
Yeah, it was definitely shorter. Yeah,
I don't think
wasn't as huge.
It's definitely a format that you think more people will be doing, but it's so hard. Like you were saying with SNL, to deliver that consistent. That consistency and to have stuff like a comedic tone that resonates, and I really think that Key and Peele really did, and I think it had consistency. I think it had a clear mentality. I watched the first season in the first episode. Mm-hmm. We had talked about Keanu with the code switching. It's literally the first scene and the first thing they're talking about is code switching.
Yeah.
It's like the first sketch is a character being like, I don't know, Mary, I'm going to see you on Thursday. And then Jordan Peele walks up behind and he goes, oh, what? Yeah, I'll be at the movie. And he's talking to like his girlfriend and goes in this whole different like tough guy accent. And it's Jordan Peele as well. And as Jordan Peele leaves, he goes like, oh my God, I almost got mugged. As he was doing the accent. So they automatically are kind of consistent of like, hey, like what this show is going to be about is talking about the different cultures. And the first thing they're talking about in the first episode is how they're biracial and how there's a black side of them and there's a white side of them. And I think they really struck this great chord between a lot of American young audiences of being able to talk to sometimes disparate groups, unfortunately. And I think that was super powerful. And I think that was a message that they got across from there, and I think it's something Jordan Peele has continued to talk about within his later works and his films and stuff.
Definitely, 100%.
What do you guys think about the evolution up until now? What Key Peele kind of represents from what we've learned from Sketch Company and what they've done differently?
Well, I know something that you've touched on a little bit is how cinematic the show is. It seems like very high quality in terms of set design and things like this, where you really get invested in these 3 to 5 minute characters in a way that it seems like a real lived-in universe, and you can hop around between so much within an episode. But I think something that they've pulled from something like an SNL that has a weekend update, and they stay topical enough to where things are still going on in the modern, like their Obama sketches with the two voices at once. You know, this type of thing really keeps things grounded in today's day and age. And going back, I will say it does take me out of it a little bit. How topical some of it is,
because it's been time stamped.
Exactly.
And man, isn't it weird seeing like an Obama sketch and be like, yeah, that was like 30 years ago.
Yeah, it
feels like we're in another world.
No, really.
But I think that's like super important that they defined. They literally went to Keegan-Michael Key went to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Like
he played Luther, Obama's anger translator, with the real Obama.
That's insane. That's reach and that's impact, and that's everything that we love talking about here about how the art impacts reality and culture at large. Chris, what do you think about what they were doing interestingly, and how what all of Sketch Comedy has been has led up to Key and Peele and
I definitely agree with you in that their sketch comedy is a little more cinematic than things that have come in the past. Even something that came directly before them, which was the Chappelle Show. If you look at the Chappelle Show and you look at Key and Peele, they're very similar setups initially, where like you mentioned earlier, Dave Chappelle is in front of a live studio audience. He'll do some type of stand-up routine, and that routine will lead into a pre-shot sketch, right? Key and Peele did the same thing for their first 3 seasons. They had first 2 seasons, a live studio audience. They would create some type of setup between the two of them, and that setup would lead into a pre-film sketch as well, just like Chappelle. So I think I have not seen a Key and Peele sketch that I don't like, which is kind of crazy, especially for a show that has spanned 5 seasons. But I definitely think they owe a lot to their style initially to Dave Chappelle, who kind of did the trailblazing for them and then set them up for success when they finally signed the deal with Comedy Central. So while I think a lot of the ideas that they have in their sketches are very original, the code switching is very topical, like we were talking about. They do tackle race a lot, just like Chappelle did. I don't think the show is wholly revolutionary. Does that make sense? It just so happens
like an evolution of
right. It is. It's an evolution of everything we've had in the past, but it's not like a mold breaking type of show.
Well, I think it was a collab. It was like a combination of doing what Chappelle did. It really is like Chappelle for millennials.
Yeah, totally.
It's definitely more sensitive. It does reversals on typical stereotypes in a very progressive way. For instance, they'll commonly, if they're ever derogatory towards a woman, it's typically the only time it's true derogatory is if one of the characters is playing a woman. So it's kind of self-referential, and then it's also on its turn kind of in the woman's favor and gives her a very dominant point of view, which is very progressive of giving a woman like a place and like making her not the object of the joke, so to speak. Like for instance, one of their famous sketches, I looked at her and I said, meh. It's this idea that the men are so afraid of what their women
their wives or girlfriends,
and the wives are really in control of things. That is this level of like, it's playing to the stereotype of men being like, whatever, but they're scared of saying it. They're getting as far away, and it's like that evolution where Chappelle would probably take typically a more straight line, not misogynistic. It's just misogynistic in 2019, but for the time it probably was very much in the zeitgeist and appropriate. It just is something that is not in the liberal consciousness of where they were.
Yeah.
Not to get too political about what it is, but it really is. Like, no. Chappelle's show is not as watchable today. It's a little harsher.
I think, like you're saying, I think for me, especially going back and watching it now, I think Key and Peele is a safer show in a lot of ways. It definitely seems culturally sensitive in a way that Chappelle's show, like, amazing Chappelle show sketch is the great New York boobs, like guys manufacturing ways to comment on women's bodies in ways that they're all for. You know, it's just like, that's freaking hilarious. And it is like indicative of the problems in society. He's playing with them.
Right.
But I think, it just, and I don't know the exact way to say it, but Key and Peele feels like a little more of a middle class show to me. Like, things like some of my favorite sketches like take place on airplanes and things, and this seems like maybe a silly point to make, but it is something where it's like, not all people have experiences and can relate to riding on planes and seeing these stories, and you don't have to be every character that you see, but it's something coming back to it where it's like, it's very, they go out of their way to be
accessible.
Progressive.
I think what you're trying to say is like Key and Peele overall is a show that's more acceptable or accessible to a broader audience than, say, what Chappelle was doing with his show. Is that kind of what you guys?
I think Chappelle was designed with a very niche idea, and it got broad acceptance. Because I would say Chappelle was probably more impactful than Key and Peele.
Oh, definitely, right?
Possibly unintentionally. Like, I think that there was just gold that was struck, and there was this level of, it was this reemergence of black culture into mainstream Comedy Central. It was the most successful thing from a black comedian since like Chris Rock or Eddie Murphy, you know, and Richard Pryor. Like, literally, Chappelle is our Richard Pryor, you know. So to have this revolutionary comedy that was so broad, I would say Key and Peele, like you said, is a lot safer. But I think it rides that safe wave very intelligently.
Oh, it definitely does.
Definitely.
And I
agree
think
with that 100%.
And I think that in 30 years it'll be more digestible than Chappelle's show.
Yeah.
Because going back with Chappelle is hilarious, but it is like full on. We don't like,
it's in your face,
raunchy and gross and misogynistic and racially insensitive. Even though it was made by a black comedian, I think even Chappelle. I was talking to you guys about this before the show, but Chappelle himself regretted the kind of stuff he was doing with the show because he was meeting the audience and it was a bunch of white fraternity bros, you know, literally saying the N-word to him and him being like, no, that is not why I made this show.
So maybe my point is completely wrong then. Yeah, it's like if these same like douchebags are watching this and relating to it, it's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think that was not an effect that Chappelle anticipated.
Right.
You know, that was just how he existed, right? And he put that on display and made it a digestible thing for a broad audience and was brilliant. I mean, literally, the guy had, it seems so simple, but he has a sketch where he was a white supremacist that was black.
That was the first episode, wasn't it? Like, that's incredible.
And so I think, to your point, to what I think we're all agreed, Chappelle was definitely more important,
fundamental.
But I think Key and Peele's going to hold up, and I think it is. Yeah. I think it is the evolution of Chappelle in a much, I think, cleaner way, and I think ultimately a better way, and not a smarter. I don't want to say Chappelle's a genius, but I want to say a more conscious way, maybe, like more aware of it, of what it's doing. Where Chappelle, I think
initially wasn't aware of what the implications and what the causality was going to be.
But yeah, I also wanted to mention the brilliance of how something I respect from writing a little sketch comedy and short films like we did in college and unsuccessful. You've never heard of it, so clearly.
And we're not going to mention it, so you can't find it.
Yeah, We Are Seamen. Was that the name? Was We Are Seamen?
It was We Are Seamen.
Not my idea.
No, it was it was stupid.
There's a good Pokemon. You guys have a Pokemon one that's real fun. I enjoyed that one.
We do have a Pokemon sketch, yeah.
Derailment is the way that it's so hard when you're writing a short comedy thing. You have typically the straight man or the person that is the constant rock in the premise, and then you have the ridiculous element, and then you have the way that real life interacts with comedy and absurdity, and resolving it is so hard because you can have funny ideas and have them have funny moments and banter and whatever, but there's resolution. It seems to be a real problem with a lot of sketches.
Right.
Yeah.
Jordan Peele nailed it by just making, I don't know, in all their sketches, I feel like 50% of them, the ending is just full, like, the pilot just, well, maybe that's not appropriate now. There are fully just, like, completely left turns. Like,
right.
Completely just being, like, and right into the absurd, leave you with this sweet note, and then out. Like,
so, kind of like magic tricks. Like, the key to writing good comedy is being able to subvert expectations, right? You're guiding the viewer, you're guiding the audience down this one path, but at the last minute, you're going to take a left turn. You're going to take an unexpected turn that they didn't see coming, and that's what makes people laugh initially, is like you're caught off guard, and you can't help but laugh at the joke. And I think Key and Peele, and I've said this so many times when talking about this show, but they're like the kings of subverting expectations. Because like you were saying, Christian, I can't think of one sketch that doesn't have a crazy like left turn or crazy subversion of what you thought was going to come at the end of it. Like, they are so good at doing that. And you would think, like, after 5 seasons of doing the same thing, it would get stale, but I've never once experienced a stale Key and Peele sketch.
No, and just working off of that, I think, and this is something that sketch comedy, I'm sure, does often, but taking literally like a single line and turning it into a story that's believable. Like, I grew up playing baseball, and the coaches, they have these keywords they go to. It's like Bush League is something that's like, that's just Bush League, subpar baseball. But slap ass, it's like, stop playing grab ass, stop playing slap ass. And just like the coach, this douchebag coach saying this, turning it into this hilarious, like, someone who actually has like a psychological problem of slapping too much
He's
ass.
Addicted to slap ass.
It's just brilliant. From one off the cuff remark. It's very well done.
Well, I found watching these, it's like, it really, you get the love and appreciation of pop culture from Key and Peele, of like just their absorbing of all media that we were doing. Like, so much of what we've talked about in the last like 5-6 months that we've been doing this podcast, or however long, I see reflected and regurgitated as like, these are all the sprouts of ideas. Like, we had this Cutthroat Kitchen episode. I don't know if you saw the episode where they are playing, and this is kind of it working in all the ways that I think they're masters of. The sketch is that they're talking, he's delivering a dish. You don't know what the competition is, but he's delivering a dish. Jordan Peele is playing a chef that is delivering a dish to the judge, which is Keegan-Michael Key. And he's going like, it's like a raspberry pie or something. And Keegan-Michael Key goes, this dish is absolute trash for someone. And it would play like, the music would change to like a dun dun dun. And it would go, for someone who didn't have an exquisite palate. And then it would go like a light acoustic guitar music. It would be like, dun 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 dun. And he'd be like, thank you, chef. And then he'd be like, if that person was from the planet that has bad taste in things. And he just kept flipping back and forth between, I accept this, but I decline it, because that's so much of the shows of like the the false subversion, and it's done with all these dramatic zooms and the music, and it's them understanding those cheap mechanics that go into these shows and understand them in an intimate way to really heighten them and parry them. That is like so key and key. making good comedy.
Pun intended. Well, before we started recording, I showed Brian my absolute favorite sketch of theirs, and I probably showed this sketch to you way too many times, but it's the sketch in which they're all playing pirates, and they're singing in a bar, and the reason why I love this sketch is for the same reasons that you were just talking about, that subversion of expectation. Like, this one sketch does that so many times within 4 minutes, because initially the setup is like, oh, these are pirates, they're going to be singing about, like, having sex with women and like raping and pillaging and all this stuff. So you have an expectation going in, and then immediately it switches and they're actually feminist pirates. So you have like multiple songs about respecting women and like pro-choice situations and all this stuff. And then you finally get one pirate who's singing more of that traditional like raping and pillaging song. And then the next subversion is that he's shot and their captain is a woman. So, like, the reason these pirates are like this is because they've been under a female captain the entire time. I think it's a really well put together sketch, and it makes me laugh every single time. So, like, that's the type of thing that they do consistently in all of their sketches, which is just super impressive.
And I think it like comes from an actual love of the content. Like,
yeah.
When you're doing a sketch comedy show of all things that's supposed to be cheap, budget friendly, execute it. The care that they take into the music and the framing of the shots, they're legitimately cinematic, epic shots in this series.
Oh yeah,
especially on the budget that they're in. And I really do think they put lots of work and lots of talent behind making those things believable. Because the more you're able to parody the things that you're making a satire of, the more that you can do it well in a way that I could actually be like, well, if you actually shot a dramatic scene this way, they're getting the tension right, the off angles, and it's like making me feel tense, yet it's going to resolve in comedy. Like, the more it's working, and that is something that is altogether missed, and obviously SNL and things like that can't do as effectively
because it's all live,
because it's staged and 3-shot camera and all that stuff. But it is something that to the newer audience, when you're able to parody those things, I think people that love it don't even and for as per the execution being flawless, they don't even notice those things consciously that's why it's working so well. But I really think that's in the details of how detailed they are. Like that's what really elevates it, and I think makes it a great show.
So with that being said, I didn't look too much into production budgets from Chappelle's show to Key and Peele. But I would assume that something like Chappelle being as big as it was led to maybe giving Key and Peele a little bit more room to work from Comedy Central's perspective. It definitely shows if that is the case.
You would definitely think that. I don't have any statistics.
I don't got any hard numbers.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you guys on the spot here.
No, not at all. But I mean, I think it's safe to assume.
I think it's safe to assume that they wanted that it's easy to say that Comedy Central wanted another Chappelle hit based on how they formatted the show. They were going, at
the beginning it was an explicit.
Yeah. So I imagine they put a lot of money into it.
And I think they probably had some failed attempts in the middle as well. Like, I remember Carlos Mencia came directly after Dave Chappelle.
That's
and
right.
He was trying to do a similar thing, but wasn't accomplishing it quite as well as Dave Chappelle was.
Because he wasn't a funny man.
Was this whole joke stealing thing around that time too?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I think it was, yeah.
Joe Rogan lit him up.
Rogan, the new media.
Joe Rogan is the mainstream media for, like, bro-y libertarians.
Mainstream media for meatheads. It's the triple M.
We have to do a Joe Rogan, like, analysis.
Honestly, I've been taking some nootropics, and it's really increased my mental health. I'll talk to you guys about it after.
I'm just on old. I'm on old tropics. Should I get on new tropics?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that's happened in the last
I'm on like
years.
carrots and beets and vegetables and red meat. Joe Rogan likes red meat.
Oh yeah, I mean,
are we derailing too much, Chris? You're shaking your head. Did you find the budget yet for these?
I didn't. I stopped looking.
Guys, can you believe that this is all we've derailed? It's because Marcus isn't here.
It's true.
We need a little Griggs in our life.
We need a little Griggs. If you're missing Griggs, I'll point one out. We're all taking a sip for Mr. Griggs. We miss him.
Marcus.
Is that Marcus?
I don't know if he listens to the show, but...
All right, did you find the budget?
I did not. I stopped looking for
You're
it.
a terrible facts guy.
That's Brian's job.
Yeah, Brian, you
I
can't
don't have
ask
a computer.
questions.
I don't have headphones. I'm bare and helpless over
Brian,
here,
we
guys.
don't ask you to have all the questions. We ask you to have the fucking answers.
When you're tired of finding answers, sorry. Let's push on.
Conkling round the table.
Tune in to fucking questions.
The Google Cast.
Anyway, so that'll lead us into stumbling into just how you have to end up Beers Bros. Stumbling into our opinions, our personal affects. We've talked about the impact, talked about why it's important, what they're doing really right. I think we've covered that profusely. Let's talk about our likes and what we like about the show, what we don't like about the show. You know, one thing that I had put in is, you know, in this halfway through the series, they cut out the whole studio audience duo talking thing. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Do you think it's a better show overall because of that?
So, I honestly think, I mean, I'm not sure why they decided to go in that direction, but it doesn't really change the show at all for me. Like, they're still setting up bits, and all this stuff is now pre-filmed, just like their sketches, but they're still doing the exact same thing that they were doing with the live studio audience. So in my opinion, like, having the live studio audience there or not is kind of inconsequential, because, like, the only thing that studio audience was providing for them was, like, applause, basically. So whether they're on a stage or in a car taking a fake road trip, like, they're doing the exact same thing. They're talking to each other, they're setting up the bit, and then they're playing the sketch. So I personally really don't think it changed the dynamic of the show a whole lot. But what do you guys think?
I mean, they also didn't incorporate the laughter into the sketches, which Chappelle did. And I think it's something that's died off as time has gone on.
Yeah.
This canned laughter. You know, they include it for that, so they're trying to have the both of best worlds. They're trying to have the best of both worlds,
Right.
In making this intro. I personally have never. I love the fact that they're a duo, and I love the fact that all their sketches involve the two of them playing the key roles and bouncing off each other because they have such great chemistry and they seem like best friends. I have never, no matter how good their chemistry is, I don't think I'll ever. I don't like Sklar Brothers, Sklar Brothers. This, you know the you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, yeah.
The Sklar
Uh-huh.
Brothers. I've never liked duos on stage, and I don't know what it is. Maybe we can dive deep into why this doesn't work, and I don't think they've ever been particularly popular. Even at their best, it's still weird and canned, and it feels less canned when it's just straight up written.
What about, like, Abbott and Costello?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see them live. Never.
That's also very tight. What I would say about the transition, I think I kind of am with you, Christian, that the duo on stage, pre-written, pretend improv stuff never really flows particularly well for me. And it feels like they're trying to do stand-up comedy, but it's not really the type of stand-up comedy that works the best for me.
But why is that? It's like we can watch one dude on stage pretending just as well as they are, if
It's
not
the stream
worse.
of consciousness thing, right? It feels
But
like when it's
but
back
all
and
written.
forth in that way.
This is what Bo Burnham, by the way, who
Sure.
is in a couple sketches in Key Peele. Shout out to Bo Burnham.
He is, yeah. The acapella sketch is hilarious.
Oh my god, he's fantastic. Anyway, you know, his whole thing is the deconstruction of the. If you really think this isn't written? Wow, this is so off the cuff. It's really not off the cuff. It's always written.
Yeah.
Which I've always known. But what is it about our psyches, even being nerds about this stuff? Like, why is it that two people versus one scripted seems like less stream of consciousness?
Well, I think it's the prep work, right? It's like how, compared to someone doing, working on stand-up bits, there's no way that they go through in terms of the amount of times on stage with that material that you do when you're working towards a special, an hour-long special, right? I think it's just a matter of it's not as practiced. And that's why I actually like what they did in the later seasons, because it feels like they probably filmed 10 times the amount of material for these things that they actually use in the show.
Sure, of course.
And it feels a little more off the cuff and a little more genuine to me, not being in front of the audience like that. But it could just be a product of the way that it's shot as well.
Maybe it's that you have so much more liberties when you're shooting a stand-up special where, you know, they film 2 or 3 of these sets and then they go back and edit it together. And they're able to make it tighter because they can, like, work with it a little more. Where it's like when you have 2 people, it's like, ooh, if they're not standing in the same exact place, there's no cut that's going to hide that I mean, one of the worst things about the intro that they had is that the laughter is so canned there's so many times when the audience is losing their mind, and you're just seeing the audience, and they're just like sitting completely still. And yeah, that happens a lot.
I actually never noticed that.
I never noticed that either.
Well, when you're an audio guy, when you mess with audio.
Frequencies,
and the vibrations, and you used to. No, I've done. I mean, at least in my experience, I've edited a lot of video, and I also do music, and I edit this fucking podcast. So I'm used to like words and even words with film. So it's very obvious when things aren't matching because your job is to make them match.
Right.
So yes, when the audience is like. And
they're really like
everybody's
sitting arms
completely still. Yeah, that's something.
They're like waiting for the show to start with their arms.
And
crossed.
not that they don't deserve the laughs, and it's canned laughter has always been a thing to kind of hint at the joke. And canned laughter is really useful for when you're like, I don't know, fucked up on Benzedrine and booze, and you can't pay attention to I Love Lucy, and
we can all relate to that.
And you're trying to figure out where the fuck to laugh with your family who's completely sober. Right, the canned laughter is great for that. But
where did that come from?
Just anti-modern sitcom hatred here.
But it's this weird thing that we've developed, and this is a bigger conversation about like canned laughter. What does it mean? Why has it disappeared? And I think the idea is that it's like a little forced, and it's when you're not laughing at something and no one else is laughing, you feel less alone. Whereas if you're watching something and everybody's laughing, you don't think it's funny, it's almost more annoying than if you're watching it without. And it's the fakeness of it. Yeah. Go ahead, please.
No, just a quick shout out. David Lynch, back in the day, in the kind of I think it was around 2004, 2005, when Inland Empire was in the works. He did a online, I wouldn't call it sketches, but just like short segments that he released every so often. And it was human-sized rabbits in this sitcom-ish thing with laugh tracks that were completely not related to the words being spoken. And it's this weird, like, uncanny valley of, like,
crazy.
What are we laughing at? Like, what's going on here?
And maybe it's those kind of things, those kind of parodies of it, and realizing the ridiculousness of it that have led to kind of it being eliminating, being phased out. Because it's completely absent from the later, like, there was none in their sketches, smartly. And there's obviously they cut out the whole thing. So you're I don't care about it.
No, I didn't. It didn't really affect me one way or the other because I didn't tend to pay attention to the audience at all when they had the audience there. I really was focused on what their conversation that they were having. Yeah. So, like I said, whether they're having a conversation on stage or in a car, something that's pre-shot, or have like a pseudo narrative running through their intros. It doesn't really matter to me either way. But I definitely can see where Brian's coming from, and that the stuff on stage did seem a little less polished than what they had in the last two seasons with them traveling and stuff that they'd pre-shot.
I did, I have to say, I really did enjoy what they were doing as stage as it was, and as much as I don't think duo comedy works as well as singular comedy, and as much as them just pre-scripting it, I think accepts the barriers of the show and sets the parameters for the show a lot better. I think what they were doing was good, and they're obviously being bigger, but you really get, like, I really think, especially Keegan-Michael Key, is such a stage improviser, in that he's so big. Like, he is a big... I would love to see him in a Broadway play or something, because he really is kind of a larger-than-life figure, whereas I think he plays well against Jordan Peele, which is, he's like really reserved and calm, and he almost plays the straight man in almost all of their on-stage.
Speaking to that dynamic, another sketch that I absolutely love is the sketch where they play Outcast reuniting for the first time in like a decade. Jordan Peele plays Big Boy, and Keegan-Michael Key plays Andre 3000. I don't know. Have you guys seen that sketch?
No, out of all the sketches that I've seen.
Oh my god. Okay. After the recording, we have to watch it. But this is like a perfect example of what you were just describing, in that Jordan Peele's very good at playing the straight man, even though he can be very comedic and weird and out there. Yeah. But Keegan-Michael Key can reach those like really weird and crazy levels that maybe Jordan Peele can't always reach.
It's amazing how much energy that guy has to give.
Yeah.
It's really awesome.
And he has a great, like, just speaking about, like, comedic body structures. Like, he's a pretty lanky individual.
Physical comedy,
yeah,
sure.
He's great with the physical comedy, and I think his body really suits the type of characters that he ends up playing in the show.
So let's go over some of our favorite sketches.
Yeah, okay. I was about to say, remember when.
I've already kind of done that a little bit.
I know. You can't not talk about it without mentioning examples. And we gave a few, but we're winding down here, wrapping up our Beers with Bros episode. I can't host anymore if I have another drink, so we're probably in a good spot.
About that time.
It's about that time. It's about that time. Yeah, I'm starting to like say the big words, but then pause a second before I'm like delineation. Delineation. That's it.
We've got it.
Speaking of delineation,
so remember when?
Remember when?
Brian, what are your some?
Give us Brian. Hey, Brian.
That's the one thing
Brian.
I wrote down.
Brian.
Is he here? Is that? Oh, yes. Okay. I would say there's a couple that are just completely silly and hilarious that I love. The parkour Harriet Tubman is one of the greatest things conceptually ever, and it kills me. It's a little long, but inevitably the slaves that she's trying to rescue can't keep up, and it's just hilarious watching her, just like someone who's so known for traveling long distances, being like the original free runner, as they say. That one kills me. The racist zombies sketch, where you just have this classic zombie film, and the zombies end up not wanting to eat black people, and they see a family just grilling out back. That's definitely up there for me. We talked about it just a minute ago. The Prepared for Terry's.
Oh yeah! Oh my god!
The guy's getting on the plane and just so into saving the plane from terrorists that they just seem like terrorists themselves. There's so many that I love. There's one that I actually hadn't. I'm not sure I had seen it prior to preparing for this podcast, but Peele plays the guy who played Carl Weathers on Family Matters, Reginald Vell Johnson.
Yes,
and he's speaking to his manager.
Oh my god,
about Steve Urkel's
and then they
control
have
over the show.
The kid from Everybody Loves Chris playing Jaleel
Urkel.
White.
Yep.
Oh my, I love that.
It's unbelievable.
So funny.
I'm sorry, I didn't give you guys any room to interject there, but those have got to be up there for me.
Chris, what about you?
Well, the pirate sketch, as I mentioned, top tier quality. There's another sketch. I sent it to you guys in our group chat, Gangsta Standoff, where these two thugs kind of meet each other and realize they have a whole lot in common, and they end up becoming best friends. But the entire time they're living their lives, they're pointing their weapons at one another, and then finally they're like elderly and on a porch, so they're still pointing the weapons at one another. And they both end up dying, and these two policemen walked up, and this is what we're talking about, like subverting that expectation. These two cops roll up to the porch, even though they're two elderly men holding guns, and one of the cops just turns to the other one and goes, "Another gang-related death." so ridiculous. They're like the other one that I sent you guys, Dick Nanigans. Did you watch this one?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Of the two interpretive artists on stage, like doing this performative art with like a PowerPoint presentation playing behind them, and one of them is like consumerism and society and love, and at the very end of each like slide, they'll kick each other, punch each other in the nuts, and then the woman off stage will say Dick Nanigans.
That woman off stage is Chelsea Peretti.
It is Chelsea.
She is Jordan Peele's wife.
Is she really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, she's married to Jordan Peele.
That is crazy.
Very little research.
Yeah, I apologize, loyal listeners.
No,
That's a very interesting fact. She'll say Dick Nanigans, and then it'll cut to the audience, and they'll just go like, "Oh, I get what he's doing there. Oh, that's very deep." So it's kind of like
it's pretty much like Velvet Buzzsaw in a sketch. You can just watch the sketch, and you'll understand any comedy or any commentary that Velvet
pushing back against that. Pushing back.
But did you see Velvet Buzzsaw?
I did see it. Actually, I didn't talk about it. My opinions on the
topic.
We can get into it at some point.
What? Little side up. I said side up.
Side
episode.
We'll do a bonus.
We'll do a bonus. We'll do a little boner.
We also, I have to mention...
I digress into Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. The drunker I get.
Pepe Silvio.
I'm sure that sounds excellent on the mic.
I edit the show.
I don't have headphones.
I'll figure it out. Figure it out, Chris.
Another great sketch is the MC Mom sketch that we watched.
Oh, yeah.
I had a conversation with my actual mother earlier today in which she said the words, put the pussy on the chain
Wait,
wax.
what was the context for your mom saying put the pussy on the chain
she
wax?
kicked the door
She
down.
knew that we were recording a Key Peele episode tonight. She was telling me how much she loved the show and how much she loves that sketch, Put the Pussy on the Chain Wax. And it was a very surreal moment.
For the record, Chris's mom is probably the sweetest woman I've ever met in my life. She's caring, loving, empathetic, non-judgmental.
All the above,
I
yeah.
cannot imagine in any universe, in any existence of her,
She's been known to drop an F-bomb or
that
two.
she would say, put the pussy on the chain wax.
She said it. It happened.
That's why your mom's the greatest.
It-
She's the goat.
Yep. Truly
she
is.
the goat. I love my mom. She doesn't hold a candle to your mom.
What?
There she's like, Mary Beth Katie is a goddamn saint.
Your mother is also a
wonderful
very
woman.
sweet and kind woman.
She is. She's wonderful.
She may or may not have made a salad tossing joke at some point that Christian told me about.
And that is why.
See, my mom saying pussy on the chain wax, unironically, would be something I totally expect from my mother. Mary Beth, I love you. You're the best. You're the reason I'm so funny and have a drinking problem. All right, so...
No.
I'm just kidding. I don't have a drinking problem. This is Beers Bros, where we drink responsibly.
Where we enable Christian.
Yeah.
So my one of my favorite sketches from Key Peele's episodes.
What are they, Christian? Tell us.
Is the East and West Bowl, which is like
Oh my
a
gosh.
4-part. And this, guys, if you want to know what a simple man I am, what a non-intellectual goof, buffoon of a man I am.
Asama Tanks. What is it?
I was going to ask if you could give me any one
I've
of
got
the
a
names.
whole list in front of me.
Let's do it. Let's do
please.
this.
Because it really dials in on what I find funny, which I think is why, not speaking too pretentiously, why I think I'm a creator is because I really do get off on like this idea of really taking a joke too far and really exploring the outer boundaries of where a joke can go. This whole premise is literally just a writer's room.
It's so
of
good.
people
Just
cracking
coming up
each
with names.
other up.
Ozymandias Crookshanks.
Yes, that's it.
That has to be one of
The
them.
premise of this is they're as we have seen with at college football. If you've ever watched college football, it's always these awkward things of people announcing their names. And oftentimes, there's always some weird stuff like, well, why is that? That's a name that was literally made up. So it's taking it to its logical extreme or its illogical extreme. And man,
I want to hear some of your favorite names.
dude, literally all of them. They only get so they peak like if you can't watch 4 of these sketches in a row because at a certain point it breaks. Even for me, it's like 2.5 of these. It breaks for me where. Everything stops being funny because it's all ridiculous. But if you just listen to all of them, okay. So they start with DeMarcus Williams,
Normal name.
except for T.J. Jackson,
Totally normal still.
Devarius King, okay,
That's still pretty normal.
Tyrell Smoochie Wallace,
There we go. Now it's beginning.
Aquarius Green Jr.,
DeQuaris Green Jr.
Ibrahim Moises, Jack Marius Tech Theratrix, the Isaiah Tiberius Clyde. And what's even great about this is the amount of like they're literally making up a character for each of these names, and so they'll have lisp and they'll be loud and they'll be quiet. Hingle McCringleberry, the Jinglin McGroon,
Hingle McCringleberry. That's the best one.
Xmas Jackson Flax and Wax,
No.
Sagittarius Jefferson, the Gledster Hedrichud.
Oh my gosh.
Quattro. Then you get X-Wing at Ilias Ness. TJ, AJ, RJ, Blackens, 4th and 5th. Donkey Teeth.
That was the full name. Donkey Teeth.
Torg. Louis.
I don't know how you wrote that one down to be honest, but that's incredible.
The player formerly known as Mouth Cop. And then, like, a white guy comes up and goes, Dan Smith.
Yeah. Oh wow.
I'm just going to play a B-roll of Beezer 12 washing beard.
So ridiculous.
Devon shower handle. Hingle McCringleberry.
I feel like that. Does that come back twice?
No, I mentioned that again.
Oh my god.
Quasmataz Buckshank.
That's what I was thinking.
Quasmataz. Quasmataz Buckshank. There we go.
Shakirian TJF Carter.
No, TJ.
Scoish Velociraptor Maloish.
Oh, the dolphin
Yeah,
noise.
yeah.
I remember.
The Cluster Handrechud.
Squish noise.
Javari's Jamar, Javar's Jamar.
This is out of control. We've lost all track of the
You're gonna have to edit
here.
this shit out.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, I'm dying.
Yes, that's amazing.
Oh man, yeah, that is like I've always come back to that, and that God, if you don't have any joy in your day, please just put on East West Bowl, any of them, and
great,
it'll bring you up because it eases into it. It starts with like Marcus Jackson, Demarius Jackson, or whatever. You know, well, I guess everybody's not name can't be Jackson.
No, they're all normal names.
T.J. Jefferson.
They're all very normal names.
And it's like Tyrannosaurus Godsmack.
Wait, this is making me think, isn't there a sketch of one like an Ancestry.com ad where everyone's just derivative from Thomas Jefferson? Yes.
I learned that my great uncle, it goes back to it's all these like white people, it goes back to the pyramids. It's like, oh, I learned that I've got a little bit of Genghis Khan in me, and then every other person's a black person going Thomas Jefferson, and then some people going Thomas Jefferson.
I watched another sketch of theirs. I think it was earlier on in the show's lifetime where they came up with an app that would tell you whether or not you could say the N-word. Do you guys?
I don't think I've seen that one.
So that's the whole premise. It's really funny because you have a bunch of white guys and they're just like, I can't. But it's like it'll like take a picture of you or ask you questions and then determine whether or not you're able to say it, and then it'll give you this chart with like these smiley faces. And it was just, I forget what they named the app, but it was the most ridiculous thing. And that's how they kind of started the show. So,
oh my god, yeah, they do a lot with that. And, a lot of stuff we see them talk about in Keanu is what we talk about, and even in Jordan Peele's more serious work, Get Out, and hopefully what we see from us is they always are like tackling it. I remember like one of their like low-ski, less ridiculous sketches kind of tackles a lot of the what people say, even though they don't realize they're being racist. And it's one sketch was. Sorry.
Christian just vomited all over his back.
That was in there. Really? That was in there.
I gotta.
The best thing is that I pulled this out of the ridiculous, and I was like, but on a more serious note, they're really tackling. 1 second.
Off the rails.
Anyway, the race relations between the white culture and black culture really was examined quite acutely in their sketch titled Birds of a Feather from Season 3, Episode 2, Sketch 3.
I gotta take a fucking off.
Anyway.
Is that was a real sketch, though?
Yeah, no, they're at a bar. No, well, they didn't burp. That was me.
Right, sure.
They're at a bar. They're at a bar and walk it off, Chris. Walk it off.
Chris needed a break.
They're at a bar and they have various white people come up, and one's a drunk girl going like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry." And they're like, "For what?" And she's like, like slavery. You have nothing to be sorry for. You weren't there. And she's like, "I know, but like the way that you've been treated." And they're like, "We're fine." They just go, and then they walk away, and then another guy comes up and some guy comes up, and he's wearing a Tribe Called Quest shirt, and he like before he walks up there, he pours beer on it, and then walks up and goes like, "Oh," and grabs like a napkin. He's like, "Oh, sorry, I gotta clean off my Tribe shirt." And and then he looks at him and he goes, "Name one person in Tribe," and he's like, Smokey.
Oh my god,
that's hard to watch.
And I judged them, and I said, I know there's a guy named Q-Tip was in Tribe. I know that. I would pass the test. Giggity, giggity, giggity. No, yeah. But they reference things they would talk about in future episodes, and I think they do it intelligently and with great humor. Hold on.
No, it's almost like a virtue signaling type thing, right? It's like people have this guilt and they're trying to like, oh, I'm an ally. Look, this is
kind of what I had labeled as like faux progressivism, which is like this. I'm acknowledging it, so I'm fine, right? It's like we have a lot of work to do.
I would have voted for Obama a third time if I could have.
As someone who says way too much and is already, I say things that I regret almost immediately, like on this podcast. We have a long way to go. I think this we can learn from Key and Peele is that we all have a long way to go, and why don't we have a laugh along the way, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I think laughter. I'm not sure if Peele talked about this explicitly, but comedy and horror, I feel like they're playing with a lot of the same mechanisms in terms of expectations, and Key and Peele uses it very well.
And I think they play into catching people off guard. I think when you scare people or you make them laugh, I found in
Similar concepts.
Well, boys,
Watch Key and Peele.
watch it. I think it's going to hold up. You've seen their sketches.
Streaming on Hulu.
Oh,
right
can
now.
I mention one more? Sorry.
Go for it.
Do it.
The one where it's the two Middle Eastern dudes and they're watching women walk by in full hijabs and they're like, "Did you see the ankle bone on her?" Oh my god! Because it appeals again. It's this like progressive idea of they're leaning into men will be gross about like anything, and even if you cover up a woman completely, they'll still oogle and be gross about it, and that it is in fact not how women dress, but just how men are.
Yeah,
I think it says a lot about society that way, and it's that cracks me up every time.
Before we get off it, I have to talk about the Continental Breakfast sketch.
Iconic.
I will say I was a bit upset that it totally spoils The Shining's ending, which is something it's from 1980, so it's hard, but that sketch is brilliant and hilarious. That's one of my favorites.
It's creepy too. I think it's the creepiest Key and Peele sketch, because I think if you watched it with just like music, I think if you just change 10% of it, it becomes very uncomfortable and very creepy. It's already uncomfortable, but it's still leaning into the comedy.
Yeah, the silliness.
It is on the borderline of like, this guy is a sociopath.
Right.
Very scary.
We could do this all night.
We could. We will, but off mic.
And it's late.
It is getting late. It is oh my god, it is almost 1 o'clock.
It is indeed.
Guys, this has been a very successful Beers and Bros. We're going to come back to you sometime in the future with us. Sorry for the delay, but shortly after that, we're going to have our MCU, and we're going to have a lot of special guests.
It's going to be great.
Oh, a guest! It's going to be a guest-packed bonanza.
It's going to be fantastic.
That's exciting.
Marvelous, you might say.
Oh.
That's perfect.
Flatback.
Don't throw up.
I'm a vomit. Thanks, guys. This was fun. I know we're bad at ending shows, but I'm going to try to end it really smoothly here by saying...
all the punchlines. Email us at popaholicscast@gmail.com if you have any feedback for us. You can reach out on Facebook at Pop-O-Holics, Twitter as well, and on Instagram, Pop-O-Holicscast. Consume consciously, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Have a great week.
We lost Christian.
Thanks, guys.
A pop.